I'm delighted to be joined now by Jane Wakely, Chief Marketing Officer at PepsiCo. And Pepsi, Lay's and Gatorade feature once again in Kantar BrandZ's most valuable food and beverage brands this year. Congratulations, Jane, to you and everyone at PepsiCo on this superb achievement, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Oh, very nice to see you, Martin. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with a really broad question to begin with. How do you believe brands add value to businesses?
Well, that's a great question for a marketeer, isn't it? And probably my answer is not too much of a surprise, Martin, but brands are our lifeblood. They're how we connect and delight billions of consumers every week at PepsiCo. And actually, we've got 20 brands that are over $1 billion. And, wow, you know, these are the assets, the key assets, together with our people, which really accelerate our short-term performance, but importantly, multiply our long-term performance in terms of the growth, the value creation, but also in terms of our ability to bring to life our Pep Positive strategy, our positive brand strategy, where we want to grow brands that are not only delighting consumers, but also providing positive impact to people and planet. So yeah, brands are our number one asset for sure.
And it's great to hear you talk about how important brands are for long-term growth. That's definitely a message we wholeheartedly agree with at Kantar. Now, clearly the world and businesses generally have faced a great deal of headwinds in recent years. Just wondering, what do you feel are the biggest headwinds that you faced at PepsiCo, and how have you gone about overcoming them?
Yes, look, I think, tailwinds and headwinds is, what we as marketeers, as growth architects face every day. And I think the challenge of really creating outsized performance on growth is you have to lean into the tailwinds and you can't ignore the headwinds. And you've got to work out which of those headwinds are going to become critical to category development as we go forward. One headwind that we've been facing into is we've been renovating our portfolio very proactively to make sure that we provide our consumers with choice around, for example, no sugar alternatives, around lower sodium, lower saturated fat options on our foods business, and making sure that we really proactively lead and shape our categories, never giving up a single inch on taste and enjoyment, but actually really pushing our R&D colleagues to find new technical ways to delight and yet meet the consumer needs nutritionally. So that's obviously one that's at the heart of our portfolio. I think the other one that many of us in CPG and many industries are facing, at the moment, is our categories have grown tremendously, both in value and volume. But clearly, inflation, in the last couple of years, has driven more value growth than volume growth. And I think what we're needing to face into and what we're determined to face into is ensure that we can rebalance that moving forward and really drive our costs down so that we can create value for the consumer at both ends of the spectrum of our categories. I always call it, we want to democratize our positive choices. Price should never be a barrier to the best products and best brands. But at the same time, we want to push and lead and shape our categories into new space to be able to premiumize and shape our categories in that way. So those are just some of the tailwinds and headwinds that we're facing. And what I would say is, our categories have been incredibly resilient and are some of the fastest growing in the industry. But that doesn't come through standing still. It comes through really identifying how to lead and shape the category for the future.
And certainly the volume value growth conundrum is something, again, being faced by many of our clients, particularly in CPG. Yes. So great to hear your perspective on that one.
Sure.
And obviously PepsiCo is a very large global business. Just thinking about marketing from a strategic perspective, how do you go about designing and aligning and delivering a marketing strategy across so many different brands and geographies from a very macro perspective?
Yeah, look, I mean, I've been in global roles for a long time. The way I think about it is there is no global consumer. Let's be clear. Consumers are local, there are local cultural preferences, etc. However, the way you get to, leverage your global scale to drive local competitive advantage is by really elevating the marketing, the innovation to find the universal human truth. The truth that crosses cultures, crosses generations. When you find that on a brand and you can create a creative platform that really speaks to that universal truth, then, it's amazing how it travels. Now, having said that, I'm a big believer in local relevance. So I think the best brand campaigns are big creative platforms that are global, but then with incredible creativity within that framework that drives local relevance. So that's how I think of it. Global might for the local fight. Think of it like that.
That's really nice. That's a nice way of putting it. And clearly, in terms of recognition and differentiation, distinctive assets can play a big role in setting a brand apart and helping with recognition across different markets. How do you go about deploying your distinctive assets in a consistent and connected way? I noticed Pepsi has got a new look, so perhaps you could talk a bit about that as well.
Of course. Yeah, look, firstly, I think we have to be very humble as marketeers. Memory structures, distinctiveness, brand meaning is built over generations. It's very hard to do very fast. And so as marketeers, we stand on the shoulders of the giants that went before us. And joining Pepsi, I'm very humble to the generations of incredible marketeers who have built these brilliant brands. And one of the things that the greatest brands in the world do is they drive consistent meaning, they drive consistent distinctivity, because that's the way we shortcut into the memory structure and the fabric of culture, right? And so Pepsi's a great example. Someone said to me the other day, why did you do a new logo on Pepsi? What was behind that? It's not a new logo. It's a visual ID that deeply draws from the past, from where Pepsi comes from what Pepsi stands for, from the shortcuts in people's memories that distinguish and make Pepsi recognizable. But it also imbues new meaning. So, for example, the Pepsi Visual ID relaunch that went around the world, the pulse, the logo, the energy that comes from that, it makes you feel something. It moves you. It makes you feel energized. It's incredibly exciting. And, that visceral response, that emotional response is triggering new memory structures that pull from the past, but distinctly propel us into the future. So that's super exciting. But it also is ambitious in terms of strategic meaning. So I talked about our zero products before, which are fantastic taste and zero sugar. When we launched the new Visual ID, the Fast Company issued a fantastic quote. They said, it's a subliminal war on sugar. I thought that was very interesting. And they've read into the strategy. Actually, part of our branded strategy is to create one brand, not distinct SKUs and hero SKUs that all need to be advertised. And that's going to help us. If you look at the colors, if you look at how we're using black and blue, it's all about propelling us into the future, where zero is becoming a much bigger part of our portfolio. The consumer is increasingly choosing that part of our brand, and we want to hero that in our communications and in our physical availability moving forward. So there's a lot deeper meaning behind the Visual ID than just the logo. And I hope you feel like I do, that it really does honor the past and yet propels the brand into the future. And I know it's giving, the feedback we're getting from around the world is giving our teams a lot of energy. And congratulations to the design team led by Mauro Porcini and all of our great marketeers at the world who haven't tried to reinvent. What they've done is they've taken the inspiration and then they've locally applied it creatively to local cultural icons, local situations and contexts, which have just made it, spectacularly come to life in a very consistent way, but in a locally, culturally relevant way. So I'm super proud of the teams, honestly.
Yeah. So obviously relevance is very important at a consumer level. How do you ensure your brands maintain their relevance and that meaningful connection with consumers?
Yeah, look, we talk that the beating heart of what we do is human centricity. How do we deeply understand those universal truths, the deep needs and desires of the people we serve, the consumers we serve, and create that bond with our brand? And I'm just thinking, there's an incredible example we've just launched at the moment on Quaker. If you start at the basic insight, Quaker is sort of the breakfast that sets you up for the day. It creates a sort of a possibility in the day. But that's not mind-opening or heart-opening. The latest Quaker campaign of You Got This, really brings to life the moments where that start to the day, the support that both the product and the brand give you, but also perhaps the person that's making you the bowl of Quaker gives you with the You've Got This campaign. And I think when you unlock that deep meaning, you find creative that really unlocks the ultimate expression of when that moment counts most. It's so universal, and deep universal human truths unlock emotion.
I'll definitely go and have a look at that one as soon as we've finished the interview. Sounds great. So moving on, you talked about sugar a few minutes ago, and you talked about no sugar being a growth area for your portfolio. I'm just wondering generally around how you go about identifying new spaces at PepsiCo. How do you actually do that in practice? Obviously listening to and monitoring consumer behaviours, but how do you do that, and then how do you make decisions accordingly?
Yeah, the first thing, look, we're really clear that the first priority of marketeers is to understand short-term and immediate behaviors. We're in high velocity categories, right? So when you do something right, you learn about it pretty fast. And when it's not going so well, you also get very fast feedback. So the first thing is we need our marketeers to be literally finger on the pulse of those real-time behaviors, those signals. And we prefer system one responses, meaning behavioral responses rather than articulated attitudinal responses, because we know there's often a very big gap between what people say and what they do. So we really prioritize that behavioral response up front. Now, once we've mastered that and we can see the repeatable patterns in what I call the science of growth, and we're making sure that we learn from that and we build sustainable, repeatable growth plans that build from that insight. It's about projecting the future of demand, the future of your category. And I think this is where we have something at PepsiCo called the Change Compass. And I really love it because it takes a mixture of macro forces, social listening that uses many data sources from Sprinkler to Black Swan to basically create foresight that starts to help us have a crystal ball. And I always say there's only one thing you can guarantee when you predict the future, and that's you're going to be wrong. So don't predict too firm a future. What we do is we scenario plan. We actually look at the macro forces, look at the foresight, and when we're at our best, what we do is we literally push the corner of the envelope, really understand, different possible futures that this could create. And I think the power of that exercise is if you use really diverse thinkers, people with diverse backgrounds, diverse skills, diverse cultural paradigms, actually, you really get to push the boundaries of what the future could create. And then as a category leader, a category shaper, you start to say, okay, so in that scenario, how could our business flourish? How could we delight the consumer? How could we shape the future of our category to even meet unmet needs that are here today? And I think that's the mark of leading brands that really lead and shape their categories. They don't just hold the mirror up to the current reality and be reactive. So that's a really exciting part of defining the demand growth of the future.
Yes. And can you perhaps give us an example of where you've identified a particular change in consumer behaviour and something that you've either developed or adapted or launched to help you find new space and identify growth?
Yeah, look, I think one that I'm super proud of the company for and excited about the future is SodaStream. Okay, SodaStream, if you think about it, it is a delivery system for how to enjoy carbonated soft drinks in particular, but any soft drinks that really removes the need for any plastic. It leapfrogs the current conventions. The same with we have a very interesting business development on our Gatorade brand. Gatorade is a fantastic incredible brand that's all around hydration. It's all around maximizing your performance as an athlete via hydration. And, one of the interesting things is, again, the development of our powders, our tablets business, personalized hydration with our sweat patch and with our GX bottle. That is reimagining the category for the future. It's deeply understanding people's drivers, but also their barriers, and really systematically overcoming them and reimagining a future that overcomes those barriers.
So we're going to finish today. I was interested in one phrase you used, which I think leads into our last topic, and it's a really hot topic that many of our clients are talking about. So you talked about the difference between what people say and what people do, and I think that applies very much to the world of sustainability in some ways at the moment. So again, just wondered from your perspective, what role do you think sustainable behavior from businesses, but also sustainability perceptions around brands have to play in the way that consumers are making choices?
Yes, look, I mean, I'm a big fan of the work that you've done at Kantar on the value action gap that really shows, people's value, what they care about, but then compares it to their sustainable behaviors. And I think as growth architects, as marketeers, we need to be obsessed around understanding that difference, what people actually do versus what they say, and in sustainability, there's a very, very large gap. And that is our task as marketeers, as innovators, to close that gap. It's not people not wanting to make a change, it's that we're making it difficult for them. We have to remove the barriers. There shouldn't be a trade-off between the category benefit and a sustainability benefit. We've got to find that sweet spot that marries the two. And we've got to use all our innovation, but also our storytelling, our creative muscle to really bring to life and remove those sustainability barriers in a way that makes it the obvious choice, that makes it the norm. And what I was excited to see, we just did a report with you actually on particular categories. And what we can see is among some cohorts, that value action gap is beginning to reduce. So it is possible. We must not lose hope, but we as marketeers, as innovators, as designers must up our game and, find those solutions that remove those barriers and trade-offs, because it's the only way that we're going to make growth really repeatable and sustainable. And at PepsiCo, we call it powering positive growth. And we're very determined to play our part in closing that value action gap.
Yeah, certainly a challenge for every business, and it's really fascinating to hear your take on that. So thank you for joining us again today, Jane, and no doubt we'll see you again soon.
Okay, thank you so much, Martin. Thank you.